everybody, it's Brock and we got a brand new episode of All About. If you're new to the channel, I'm Brock and I worked in a fish store for many years and have been in the hobby researching fish, corals, and inverts for over 10 years now. We got a top 5 video today and we're diving into the world of eels. These predators are a big attraction to any saltwater hobbyist. You can find them dwelling in fowlr tanks, filled with predators, or even some among the reefs. Eels can range from lengths of 2 feet to upwards of 5 feet by adulthood in the tank setting. So you want to make sure you're ready for their size in the tank. If you've seen my All About videos of the eels, you'll notice a major increase in price over the years. These guys have definitely gotten expensive. In eels' typical tank setting, you'll want a soft sand bed. Harder crushed corals can sometimes cause irritation on their skin as they swim across, so you want to make sure you got a soft sand bed. You want a lot of live rock, but you want it to be spaced out for them to actually sliver through. You don't want to just stack up a tight wall of live rock in the tank and expect them to actually make some home, especially as they get bigger. Give them some larger caves and caverns to hide in, and also spots you can poke food near so that they will come out and feast. Eels can be a major escape artist, so you want to make sure you have the top of your tank covered and overflows aren't easily accessible for them to get trapped in the filter. A small crack can give them all they need to try and get out to do some more exploring, so if you're using glass lids, make sure you get those plastic strips that can go across and completely seal off the top of the tank. Stick to the end of the video and I'll tell you about this dream eel tank we built for a client that I would love to have for myself. Overall, I hope you gained some new knowledge on eels and can add some tools to your toolkit. At number 5, we have the Saltwater eel, an absolute beast of an eel. This eel probably has the most eye-catching pattern you can find. They like to call them the honeycomb eels from that black and white design that runs down their entire body. This eel is definitely the most expensive one we're talking about today, coming in at $350 to get yourself a Saltwater. This eel is very easy to take care of. They are relatively hardy and do well at feeding from you quickly. The one in the video is one that we got in as a juvenile, and within the first week, he was feeding from us, from the skewer. So that was always a big win for us. Live foods are always good to have on hand in case they are denying your feedings. But in my experience, eels have been 10 times easier to get to feed from you than to say like a lionfish eating from you. This is one of the biggest eels that you can get in your saltwater tank. Some recording up to 6 feet long. An eel that big is going to need a massive tank to be comfortable in by adulthood. If you think about it, a tank of 180 gallons is typically 6 feet in length, so you can expect to need a tank with a lot of gallons to be required to fit this eel. They are known to get very aggressive over time, so you want to be particular about who you put this eel with. I've heard horror stories of people having this eel in a tank stocked with fish, and over time it slowly but surely saw the other fish as snacks. If I was to suggest fish that I thought would have the best chance of sharing a tank with this Saltwater, it would be ones like puffers, triggers, large snappers, and groupers. It's a good practice to add the eel last as it deters them from attacking the fish as if they were new. Adding new fish in, it just looks like a snack to them, especially once you get them feeding from you. You also want to keep them well fed to ease that aggression. A fish with a full belly is usually a lot less aggressive. They're also a fang-tooth eel, so you want to be really careful around them when cleaning the tank. I definitely recommend feeding them before you stick your hand in there to do something like a water change. They are carnivores, so you want to be feeding them foods such as clams, shrimp, silver sides. I've seen them go after live freshwater fish whenever they're having a hard time eating from you, so that's always a good choice if you go get some cheaper freshwater fish to dump in the tank and they will jump after them quick. With the Saltwater, you're getting one of the wildest designs on an eel at the cost of probably ending up with an eel-only tank. At number 4, we have the Yellohead Marray eel. This is one of the most active eels I've taken care of in a saltwater tank. A white body with this cheetah pattern down the body. It's dominant yellowhead that it gets its name from. Anybody would be intrigued seeing this one in your tank. With most eels' personalities being hidden in the rock structure until feeding time, this yellowhead likes to be out and about with most of its body exposed from the live rock structure, which can be a great sight, especially with the fangs showing. The yellowheads that I could find available were costing around $200 if you could even find one in stock. They're one of the smallest moray eels, getting to be a little over 2 feet long. With eels, they are technically reef safe and won't mess with any of your corals, but beware, they will go after your smaller fish and inverts. Especially an eel as aggressive as the yellowhead, if you had to find some cleanup crew for the tank that they would possibly not mess with, my best suggestion would be large turbo snails. When feeding, this eel will be one of the first to the top, swimming out completely from the live rock, wanting a piece of food. The one in the video was so bad about poking his whole head out of the water to get a piece of shrimp off the skewer. At times we ran into an issue with other fish that shared the tank with him, and the eel would bite the grouper's tail if he missed a piece of shrimp, thinking that was the piece of food coming down. So you got to be really careful with them and how aggressive they are and how much they want to eat. The eel shared a tank with larger tangs like unicorns and naso tangs. There was a clown trigger, a red snapper, and a panther grouper in this really large fowlr predator tank. So you definitely have a wider range of what fish can share the tank with this eel. I always tell people with an eel, it's similar to a lionfish. If it can fit in their mouth, you better believe that it will be a snack for them. Another thing to keep in mind with eels, any in the list, they have a very long lifespan. The yellowhead can live up to 15 years in your saltwater aquarium, so you're making a really strong commitment when adding an eel to your home. At number 3, we have the banded moray eel. Mistaken for the zebra often, the banded has a similar look with dominant brown and white stripes all the way down its body. This is one I do not see in stock often, but it is such a good choice of eel for your tank. The banded morays were the most docile eel I took care of. They stayed to their own in the rocks. Sometimes even you could say they were shy. They'd poke their heads out occasionally for feeding, but I had the hardest time with them escaping. I swear they were one of the smartest eels I came in contact with. We had one in a large biocube for a couple of weeks before the customer came to pick it up, and I swear every other day I had to catch this eel out of the overflow, even when having it as good as closed off as I could make it. I don't know how he was still finding a way to get back there. It was honestly impressive. The banded moray eel has been hovering around $100. Some sites even had them on sale for cheaper. The banded eels get to be about 2 feet long by adulthood, so sometimes a little bit longer, but not the monstrous size of some of the other eels can get to. For eels that get 2 feet long, a 75-gallon tank is typically 4 feet long in length, so that size is good. I would just keep in mind that the smaller the tank, the more prone they are to go after other fish. You're giving them a smaller area to chase them down. Similar to tangs being together in a tank, you put a 120-gallon up, those tangs will usually not become territorial because they have so much room to swim around. But you try putting multiple tangs in something smaller, like a 55-gallon, you will see some fighting going on because there's less room. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're trying to decide how big of a tank you need to keep one of these eels. This was one eel we housed in a reef tank with other smaller reef fish like clownfish, wrasse, and gobies. We never had issues with it as a juvenile, but I couldn't promise the same as it reached adulthood. But the best practice is to add that eel last for your best chance of them not messing with your other fish. At number 2, we have the Snowflake Marray eel. This is by far one of the most popular eels in the saltwater hobby. Definitely the most sold eel too. It's one of my favorites to recommend to anyone that is wanting to take care of an eel for the first time. They're really good about adapting to captivity. They are especially hardy, and they eat from you quickly, whether you're doing live foods or foods from a skewer. Snowflakes have such a unique pattern. They have a white body with these black ink splotches all over them that form almost like a stripe pattern. And then if you look closely, pretty much everything along them is highlighted with this really bright yellow color. So just super pretty. From juveniles to adults, the colors stay very vibrant. They grow to be 2 feet long by adulthood. Most juveniles start out to be 6 inches and very skinny and very active. Most moray eels, they honestly remind me of a Labrador Retriever dog. When they are young, they are the most active dog you can have, constant energy, but once they get older, they're pretty lazy. They just lounge around being good boys. And that's exactly how these eels tend to be. They will swim around the tank. be the first to get food when juveniles, but eventually they end up hanging out in the live rock, hiding around until it's time to eat. The snowflake is one I'd recommend eventually having with larger fish by adulthood. They do well with puffers, triggers, larger tangs, and angelfish, even some of those larger wrasse like banana wrasse and them other ones that will get really big. Don't add them to a tank full of like green chromies. They will eat them up. They aren't so aggressive to track down your fish, but if it can fit in their mouth, they're going to go after it. I took care of a juvenile one in my reef tank, but eventually had to move it as it got larger. That one in particular loved krill when it was a juvenile, so that was one thing that it would actually eat when being this small. In the wild, snowflakes, like other morays, are nocturnal creatures and will ambush their prey. So you'll usually catch them at night or early in the morning, making a move to find their new spot to hang out during the day. They'll definitely still come out for feedings, and you're going to see them throughout the day, but you might find that they like to feed later in the evening or very early in the morning. So just study them and try to figure out what they like best. Snowflake eels are also one of the most affordable eel in the list. I saw some places just today selling them as low as $40 for small ones. And at number 1, my personal favorite, we have the zebra Marray eel. As the name states, this eel has the exact look of a zebra with its black and white stripes along the body. As juveniles, the black stripes are actually a more reddish brown color, but as they get older, that will begin to darken up on them. Costing in the range of $180 to $200 or more to get one, the zebra eel can reach lengths up to 5 feet long in the tank setting. So I'd recommend you get a tank that is 6 feet or longer to house this eel. The one in the video you're seeing is a full-grown adult that flourished in a reef display at the shop. The tank was 8 feet long, filled with corals, clownfish, inverts, damsels, angels, and tangs. Everything under the sun for a reef tank. The zebra eel was one of the best eels for a reef tank in my experience. They were never too aggressive to go after all your fish and inverts. People just had much better luck with them. We loved the cleaner shrimp too because they would hang out around their mouth and clean the teeth of the Marray eel, but I will say eventually they disappear, so you can use your imagination as to what went wrong. I do not recommend you do this at all, but the zebra Marray was so laid back that our shop owner could feed the eel by hand. They are probably the second best escape artists in my opinion, so keep that tank sealed. You'll be surprised how smart they are. The eel tank I mentioned at the beginning of the video was for this type of eel that we built for a client. What we ended up doing is getting PVC pipe, and we built a maze out of it, laid it at the bottom of the tank with some entryways that would stick up, and then we covered all the PVC pipe with sand, and it gave the eel a whole new world to explore under the sand bed. So the eel could swim around the caves we built them with the live rock, around the corals, but he could also go under and get into the maze and swim around there. So it just gave him a ton of room and a ton of exploration to do, and it gave him just a really fun time in that tank. That's my dream tank, to eventually do something like that and just have a big old reef above where he's swimming around. The zebra Marray is one of the oldest eels I've seen live in the tank setting. The one in the video lived to be around 19 years old, so expect this guy to stick around for many, many years. We typically would buy raw frozen shrimp from the grocery store and would thaw it out in salt water. You'd cut it up into little pieces, usually try to cut them small enough that he's not having pieces of it hang out of his mouth. You want to make sure he can eat all of it in one bite. Pare it a little bit to give little hangings off to try and entice him when you start poking it around his cave. He would come out and eat that immediately, worked like a charm. You can also get them things like clams on a half shell. You can let it thaw and then take the meaty part of the clam off. They love that too. There's a lot of different meaty foods out there that you can feed them. You can feed them 3 times a week easily, especially younger eels, eating a small portion almost every day. As this zebra got older, it got more prone to wanting larger meals, only 2 times a week. We could tell when he was full because he just did not care to come out when we would attempt to feed. So study your eel and learn what they like. Overall, the zebra Marray, you get the most docile eel, and it's your best chance of having an eel in your reef tank. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of All About. If one of your favorite eels did not make the list, make sure to leave it down below for others to check out. If you have any additional questions or want to share your experience, please leave a comment down below for future hobbyists to read. The more we learn from each other, the better off we'll be in this hobby. As always, stay safe, be kind, and I'll see y'all later.